Right. So welcome to the Climate Action West Northamptonshire 2022 AGM. Hopefully you will have had the agenda along with the other documents that were circulated in advance. I'll try not to spend too long on the sort of formalities of the meeting. It's not particularly exciting. We'll get into the more interesting stuff about what we're planning to do in future. I've got a number of apologies for absence from Alexina Cassidy, Christine Ware, Claire Robertson Marriott, Jonathan Harris, Patsy Hollingham, Richard Hollingham, and Sue Carverhill.
Can I add Nari Lee to that list, please?
Yes, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Dave.
Put it in the chat if that helps.
It's all right, I'll just type it up at the minutes up here, so I'll just do that. One of the documents that was sent round in advance of the meeting was the minutes from last year's AGM. Does anybody have any items to raise on that, or are we happy to just accept those as a correct record and move on? They were fairly short, so I don't think there's anything controversial in there. Thank you. Okay, so then again, a chair's report was circulated in advance. I'm not planning to read out the whole thing because it's about a page and a half. So if anybody doesn't have it, happy to send it on afterwards to read at your leisure. But just so a very brief summary. So it just talks about what we've done in our first year as a constituted organisation. We've actually been going for about 3 years, but last year we actually set ourselves up as an organisation with a constitution and elected officers and so on. We've done quite a lot in that year. We've had a number of events online and in person. We've started our newsletter. We've spent a lot of time sort of trying to collaborate and network with local groups and with local parish and the West Northamptonshire Council. We have monthly meetings which tend to reasonably well attended on the whole. We sort of usually get upwards of a dozen members at each meeting. We have published our first publication, which is the Claim Back Your Space booklet, which is around what would I call it? Ecological restoration rather than rewilding. I think rewilding is a bit of a controversial term potentially, but hopefully that booklet is out there and will be of use to people. And the other thing I'd just like to say is, obviously thank you to everybody that supported us for the last year, everyone that's put work into any of our projects, come to any of our events and supports the meetings. Obviously, without members and supporters, Corn would not be in existence as an organisation, so that's great. And obviously particularly thanks to people who sit on the steering committee, because they have to come to 2 Corn meetings every month, and many of them also put a lot of effort into other specific projects as well, so they do put in a lot of work, and that is very much appreciated. Does anybody have anything else that they want to say about the chairman's report, or shall we move on from that? Okay, I'll take that as a everyone's happy. So the Treasurer's report, again, this was sent around in advance of the meeting. I don't know if you want to say anything about this. Harry is our Treasurer. No, nothing to say. Okay, anybody got any questions for Harry about the Treasurer's report? I mean, the important part of the Treasurer's report, obviously, is the actual figures, which we're going to share now. Do you want me to bring those up on screen, Harry, or do you want to share it?
Would you bring them up?
Yeah, I'll do that. Hopefully, let me try and make that a bit bigger. Do we just want to go straight to the page with the figures on it, Harry? Do you want to go through the rest of the report?
I think if we just talk
to the figures, yeah,
because it won't take 2 ticks.
No, that's fine. Where are we? There we go. Is everybody see that okay? Cool. Have you got that, Harry?
Oh, yes, I beg your pardon. Yes, I have. Am I supposed to be speaking?
Well, I thought you would, or not. Sorry.
Okay. Well, thank
Perhaps
you,
people have
thank
had
you,
enough of me
everybody.
already, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So we had a grant from a local group, the charitable giving arm of a local group, for a particular project, which is that 8,580 at the top there. We've had other donations to cover particular outgoings that one or other of the steering group have had to make. So we've got a total receipt of 8,885. We've subscribed to Zoom so we can have this kind of meeting. We've had a couple of banners made for ourselves for our exhibitions. We printed that booklet, which is also available free on the website, by the way. Have created a bookmark to give away that summarizes the building resilience project, which we can talk about later on. And we bought some equipment for use in that project. And that's about the total outgoing. And I don't know why it's ended up as a beautiful round number, but it has. So the situation at the bank at the moment is that we've got just under £8,000, and that's all earmarked for publicising and promoting the building resilience project, which is why we were given the donation in the first place. Thank you, Jane.
I forgot I was on mute. Does anybody have any questions about that for Harry or for me?
Can I just?
Yes.
So this doesn't show the machine you've got, Harry, for measuring temperatures and things, or is that on loan?
Oh, we haven't bought a machine yet. Rupert's talking about the thermal imaging camera, which we'll be maybe talking about later on. We haven't purchased that, Rupert. The longer we don't purchase it, I'm hoping the technology will be getting better.
And I think the other, like the hygrometer thing that you've shown at events, and the little thing that you point at walls to give you the temperature, are things that you bought for your own use and you're just showing them as examples.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we will buy more for the project when the time comes. Anything else? Okay, in which case I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Jane.
Go, thank you. Go back to the agenda, whenever I've lost that. There we go. Okay. Oh, and we need to approve the financial statement. So if everybody who approves that financial statement, please raise their hand, or if you don't approve, then please say otherwise. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we move on to the exciting business of the election of officers. The Constitution sets out 4 officer positions: a chair, a treasurer, secretary, and a membership secretary. It won't surprise anybody to know that so far we've received a maximum of 1 nomination for each of those officer roles, but it isn't too late to put yourself forward if you're keen. So, you know, please feel free. Otherwise, I will run through the nominations that we have received. So for chair, we have a 1 nomination, which is me. I think we probably need to have that formally proposed and seconded if somebody's willing to do that. Thank you, David. I'll take you as proposer and Rupert as seconder. Thank you. Let me just write that down.
Delighted to do so.
Thank you. Okay, can everybody in favour of that please raise their hand or speak out otherwise? Thank you. Similarly, we have 1 nomination as treasurer, which is Harry, who obviously is currently filling the role of treasurer. I'm happy to propose Harry as treasurer if someone else would like to second. Thank you, Mike. Sorry, 1 second. And can everybody please raise their hands if they're in favour? Thank you. Okay. We don't have any nominations as secretary, but it's a role that I'm currently fulfilling as well as being chair. So in the absence of anyone else putting themselves forward for that, I'm happy to continue doing that. Okay, can we have a proposer and a seconder for that then, please? Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Maria. Okay. And then Alexina's not able to be here tonight, but she has offered to take over the role of membership secretary. So again, unless we've got anybody else that wants to take on that position, I'm happy to propose that if someone else would like to second. Thank you, Rupert. And can we just confirm that everyone's happy to go with that? If you wouldn't mind raising your hands, thank you. Cool. Okay, so that's that over with. Excellent. So then the next item on the agenda is the election of steering committee members. The Constitution allows, in addition to the elected officers, up to 6 committee members, although more can be co-opted onto the committee if the committee thinks it's necessary. In addition to the officers that have just been elected, there are 5 other current members of the steering committee who have all agreed that they would be happy to serve again as members of the steering committee. And we have 1 nomination for a new member of the steering committee. So the existing members, not all of whom unfortunately can be here tonight, but so we've got just in alphabetical orders, to be completely fair: Bryony Askew, Claire Slater, Jonathan Harris, Oriane Nehrude and Rupert Knowles. And the person who has put themselves forward as a new member of the steering committee is Andrew King. So welcome, Andrew. Very much appreciate you willing to put in that effort. Does anyone else want to put themselves forward or have anything to say on the topic of nominations for the steering committee?
Is it worth explaining what the steering committee does?
That is a good idea, isn't it? What does the steering committee do? We have a monthly steering committee meeting, and really what the intention of that committee is to provide strategic direction to the group. So they will talk about what projects are planned. What else do we talk about? Can somebody help me out? What else is on the steering committee? I don't know.
It's generally just to make sure that we don't stop.
Yes.
That we just keep going, whatever it is that we've, and if a member of the steering committee comes across anything from anywhere in the world that would be of relevance, it's an opportunity every fortnight just to catch up with what's happening in the real world.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, so I suppose it helps us discuss things that perhaps need a bit more of an in-depth discussion without having to put it in front of a general meeting, and then sometimes we'll come up with something that we want to put to a general meeting, but by that time it's a sort of a more formed proposal rather than just an idea, I guess.
Jane, it's Bryony here. I'm sorry, I'm having technical issues. I think I could also say that we respond to things that come up in the general meetings, so that we can take ideas forward. It's a two-way. It's a two-way thing, isn't it?
Yes, that's absolutely true.
If issues or ideas come up in the general meeting, we can pick those up as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, thank you. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, thank you. And is everyone happy for those 6 people to become members of the steering committee for the next 12 months? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for putting themselves forward. That is really appreciated. Next on the agenda, we have got some changes to our constitution. Again, the constitution was circulated in advance, but just in case anyone hasn't committed it to memory, I will bring it up on the screen. It's largely the same as last year, and it isn't particularly exciting. It's a constitution, so probably seen one of those before, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But the bits highlighted in red under the officers and committee section are the parts that have been added. We felt it was appropriate to add a section that talked about political impartiality. And also that we ought to start keeping a register of interests for members of the steering committee. So that's been added, and the final sentence in there is about other roles. So we have people filling other roles for Corn who aren't necessarily members of the steering committee or elected officers. So as an example, Richard Hollingham is the editor of the Corn Exchange newsletter, and Rupert Knowles is our agricultural correspondent as well as being a member of the steering committee. So we just felt it was appropriate to formalise that as part of the constitution. Nothing else in there has changed since last year. What I'll do after this meeting is update the part at the end which lists out the steering committee members to reflect what was agreed tonight, and we will sign it off and circulate and publish a signed off copy just as a formality. Does anybody have any comments on that? I can't see everybody, but nobody has raised their virtual hand and nobody's speaking, so I'm going to assume that the answer to that is no.
Sorry, I'm
sorry. No, go for it, Rupert. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I don't think we mentioned in there, I was reading through it just before, about having Zoom meetings and meeting in person. Do we need to sort of, is that normal nowadays that anybody, any group can meet in by Zoom, or should we actually formalise that?
That's probably a good idea, actually. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I will add something into that. I can't, this is a PDF version, so I can't add it in on the screen, but I will put something in at the top here where it says the committee will oh no, actually we probably want to put it under all meetings, don't we? I'll add a note that meetings can be either virtual or in person.
I think we ought to just regularise that, and but we don't have an obligation to have an in-person meeting because we're all rather spread out, aren't we?
Yeah, in fact, it doesn't really make any sense to, does it? But Bryony, you raised your hand.
Yes, I was just going to say, instead of either or, you could say or hybrid. So you could say in person or virtual or hybrid, so that we've got all bases covered.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. I'll do that. Anything else anybody wants to raise before you? Okay, I will assume that that's no. I'll stop sharing. So I think again we just need to formally approve the changes to the constitution. So subject to that change that Rupert suggested, which I will make and then circulate separately, is everyone happy to approve the changes to the constitution? Thank you very much. Go back to the minutes. Okay, right. So the final relatively formal part of the meeting is to think about membership fees. The constitution allows for membership fees to be charged, but the decision as to whether to charge membership fees or not is taken at the annual general meeting, which obviously is this. We decided last year that we wouldn't charge a membership fee, but that we would take donations where appropriate. And as Harry outlined earlier on when he went through the figures, we have had some donations this year to cover specific running expenses, which haven't amounted to a huge cost this year. Anybody want to raise any thoughts about whether or not we should start charging a membership fee? Alex?
Just a thought that at this particular moment in time economically, it might not be the best time to move from no fee to a fee so that it doesn't put off potential new people or people who are involved. But I think a suggested donation is always helpful so that you know kind of you've got the option and you've got some guidance as to what would be the same amount that everybody might put in.
Okay. Yeah, that is one option, isn't it? So thank you. Brian, I think you had your hand up first.
Thank you. As with Alex, I think I would favour that we have a membership fee, but that it's voluntary. So,
Okay.
you know, for those who can afford it, do, because, you know, there are costs involved in running an organisation that need to be covered, and you've been really fortunate with the grant. But, you know, I think we also need to recognise, yes, absolutely, I accept with things being tight, it's difficult, but if people can pay for their membership, then that would be great, but make it voluntary.
Okay. Thank you. I think that makes sense. I suppose the only thing I would say is that we haven't made a provision for membership to be renewed annually. Well, I suppose because we've only had membership for a year, we haven't had to do it before. But I think what I shall need to do after this meeting is to write out to people who are currently members and confirm that they wish to remain members for the coming year. And at that point, we can put forward the suggested membership fee. I guess I totally agree. I think having a compulsory membership fee would be inappropriate. I wouldn't like to that to present a potential barrier to anybody who might want to join. Corn. Any thoughts if we are going to charge an amount? Andrew, your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of something that I've seen other places do that have some sort of subscription fee. They have like sort of like a sliding scale, so you have like the sort of average worker sort of fee, and then you have like a low paid or student sort of suggested fee.
Okay.
A higher fee if you want to be more generous, so maybe could do something.
Yeah. Yes.
To help people choose which donation they'd like to do.
So you could have sort of a selection of tick boxes effectively. David.
Are there any examples that people, don't know whether Andrew's got any examples of that sort of sliding scale we could work from?
I'm not sure I've seen it exactly like that. So I've seen things like that for it paying for attending events. And obviously you see that when you, quite often, if you decide to make a donation to charities, don't they? They have boxes to say, do you want to donate £3, £10, £20 or whatever. So I guess we could do something like that. And you wouldn't then necessarily have to relate it to people's circumstances. You could just do it as a tick box just to make it easier for people. I don't think we would need to make it a very high amount. I think it would be nice to build up a small sum of money, but currently we don't have the need for a large amount to cover running expenses. Harry, you're the treasurer. Any thoughts on that?
We have very minimal running costs. We don't pay ourselves anything. We don't claim expenses. We have online meetings and the Zoom subscription and a very nominal payment annually to keep the website, the domain name registered. I think it amounts to about £250 a year altogether. Mm-hmm. So I'm very happy that we don't need to have a membership fee, that we can cover our incidental expenses as we go along. If it may all change if we become really a huge organisation with a need to have greater amount of expenses, or we have to have third-party auditors and so forth. But I think for the forthcoming year, the way it is at the moment with an entirely voluntary donation is perfectly fine financially from everything that I've seen in the last couple of years.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so if I say, I don't want to spend too much time thinking about the actual figures. Perhaps that's something that the steering committee can agree amongst ourselves afterwards. But if we say that we come up with, let's say, 3 different levels of donation, a voluntary donation, with the top one being, let's say, £20. I don't think we'd need to ask for more than that from anybody. Does that seem okay to everyone? Okay. Right, thank you. Okay, so we can move on from that if there isn't anything else to add. So perhaps the next part of the meeting might be slightly more interesting, is that the final thing on the agenda for the annual general meeting is to look at what we're planning for 2022-23. We've got a few things that we're sort of planning and looking to do over the next year. So hopefully there will be more events. We are keen to continue supporting and attending events run by other organisations, because it's a public relations exercise for us, and obviously from the point of view of raising awareness of the climate and ecological crisis, then the more we can get out and talk to people face to face, you know, I do think that is the best way of trying to help people to understand the seriousness of the situation we're in and the changes that they might be able to make. I anticipate that in 2023 there'll be another Grow Green Together conference, which we will co-organise with NACA and with the University of Northampton. Date for that and topic yet to be determined, but I think we'll definitely be doing another one of those. In terms of communications, we're obviously quite pleased with the newsletter that we've done 3 issues of so far. There'll be another issue out before the end of this year, and we'll continue to work on that next year. You know, could sort of continue to refine it and hopefully increase the audience as well. Something we haven't mentioned before, so I think that probably does deserve a mention, is the air quality monitoring project that Harry has been quietly running in the background for quite some time. I don't know whether you want to say anything about the plans to expand that, Harry, or whether it's too soon to start talking about that yet.
Yes, and apologies if this is old news to everybody. We've been putting some really low-cost particulate measuring systems out and about with our members. These are based on your house Wi-Fi, and they run off a USB power supply, and they report every minute or so to a map that is set up by the University of Stuttgart and covers the entire world. So there are a handful of these monitors around West Northamptonshire, reporting on the amount of dust in the air that they're seeing. We've not had great success in rolling out further, but that's entirely down to me, partly because the equipment that we're using is fallible, and it's well, it's embarrassing when these things don't work. At the local school in Bugbrook, which is extremely useful because it shows the effect of air quality changing when cars drop children off at school. But the actual sensor itself does need a bit of a kick from time to time, and Mike's got one in the Natural History, Northampton Natural History Society building, and that has just turned its toes up completely, I believe. I haven't had a chance to talk to Mike about it, but so we need a Mark II version, and currently the Northampton Town Climate Forum is looking at what is commercially available. The ones that I'm talking about have been hand built in Toaster by a group of enthusiasts in my dining room. So a professionally built one is it's very expensive relative to our aspirations. They're £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 each. But what we would get would be one that gets looked after by someone else, that would run off sunshine, would use the network that is like a mobile phone network. So they can just be put up a pole and live in a field anywhere in West Northamptonshire. And if they go down, then someone will go up and give them a drubbing. The process has only just begun with the town. Once we know if they are going to go ahead, then perhaps we can look at the marginal cost of putting another of these sensors on their system. And that's something that I'll be pursuing with anybody who's interested in air quality. I know Maria has always been interested in it, and I will keep her and her colleagues on that side informed about what we're doing. But I think generally speaking, it's still early days for community level air quality monitoring, but it's something that if we are going to say we've improved things, we need the evidence to say that we had started out here with this level of pollution and now look at us there with a far lower level of pollution. And we're on the bottom rung of a ladder of data collection to prove those things. That's all I wanted to say, unless anybody's got any questions.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, just say that the one at the Natural History Society is now working, Harry, you're right. I had to unplug it for more than the 10 seconds I would normally do. And it is now reporting for 2.5 size particles, a reading of 2, compared with R1, which is giving a reading of 9. These are set right next to each other.
There is a practical reason for that, for anyone who's technically interested, and that's because the ones that we've been putting in have dried the air before it gets counted, and the one that Mike originally started with can't really discriminate between moisture in the air and the particulate matter that would constitute physical lumps of pollution.
David?
I'm sure I've asked Harry this before, but are there any links to the work that West Northampton Council are actually doing on this? Because I know that I think they've spent an enormous amount of money, or plan to spend an enormous amount of money on it.
I have left them alone entirely because I didn't want to apply pressure on an already hard-pressed organisation. They did have a budget set aside. I don't know how they spent it, but I can say that from personal experience of having looked at the people who might supply the town group with £3,000 odd worth each of equipment, they may not have wanted to spend any money at this point in time with those organizations because they didn't necessarily believe that they could deliver. There's a lot of well, in the computer industry, you would call it vaporware, stuff that people say they can do that is probably non-existent until you actually give them some money, and then they make it and they go, but I shouldn't really slander these people.
Thank you. Thanks, Harry, for that. Any other questions on that particular topic? Okay, so another project which is sort of moving closer towards being active is the Building Resilience Project, which some of you will know a bit about already. For those who don't, I will just summarise it very briefly, and Harry will correct anything that I say that's wrong. Basically, the Building Resilience Project is around it's very, to put it very briefly, it's about energy efficiency, but really the data that's currently available to tell us how energy efficient the housing stock in West Northamptonshire is not very good. It's based on EPC rating, so the energy performance certificates that people have to get if they sell their house or if you rent it out. That information is publicly available, but it is quite limited. It obviously isn't complete because, for example, my house doesn't have one because we've lived in this house for 20 years, so we haven't had to get one. and it only captures certain things. Harry's done most of the work on this, but effectively has identified that there are a number of factors which affect how efficiently somebody's home performs. Some of it is about the fabric of the building, some of it is about how people use the building. And in order to fully understand what improvements need to be made to make homes energy efficient, both to save people money and to keep them at a comfortable temperature in their home, with sort of minimum or no emission of fossil fuels, we need to collect much more data about how people's houses are constructed and how they use them. So the intention is to provide a kit and a process for volunteers within communities to go out to householders, complete a fairly detailed questionnaire and have some conversation with those householders about how they use their house, you know, what temperature do they heat it to, how many people live there, of the people that live there, are they there all the time, are they in and out, all this kind of information which will help us understand what improvements may need to be made in the future. This will help us to build a really good database. Obviously, because we can only do a certain number of houses, the plan is to do it as a pilot exercise through the winter this year, with the intention of bringing out a report next spring summarising what we found. So, you know, let's say we've looked at X number of houses. Out of these houses, this is what we found. That is it in a nutshell. Obviously, there is a lot more complexity to it at the process level of the information that we'll find out and how we process that information. Would you like to add anything, Harry?
Well, I think you basically covered it, Jane. It's really making sure that we can get a small army of people representing their own community who know what they're talking about, who can go out and collect the information in a standardized form so that we begin to build up answers to questions. There's 100,000 homes, we reckon, at least, that are energy inefficient right now across West Northamptonshire. So it's going to be a mammoth task to do anything about making them more efficient. We need to make them more efficient, not just because they're just wasting household costs, but because they're emitting greenhouse gases. So we need to find out, firstly, what needs to be done to each home, each of those 100,000 homes. We need to know how much it would cost. We need to know who's going to do the work of any retrofit. And we need to know if there's anything in the supply chain to do that retrofit operation that's missing. It's ludicrous to believe that everyone is going to be able to go out and buy an air source heat pump, or even if an air source heat pump, as many are suggesting, is the answer to the problem of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And certainly, even if well-respected people just say, we need insulation. I've just spoken to so many people who live in traditional homes where either insulation would be inappropriate or entirely unnecessary, because they're ticking over very nicely with 300 or 400 millimeter thick walls, perfectly plastered on the inside, and they're really cozy. So we just live on the things that are being generalized by people who we can just help inform them better. I don't have anything more to say, Jane.
No, thank you. And I think the only thing I wanted to add was that in addition to the other benefits in terms of the data collection piece at the wider level, we think that talking to people on an individual basis about how their houses are operating will help to raise their own awareness about how they can perhaps improve their own energy efficiency just by doing things a bit differently, and understanding what they might be able to do when and if the money is available to actually make any material changes if those are required. Rupert, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I'd like to. I think this is a brilliant project, by the way, and I'm hoping it's going to start fairly soon. It's not quite cold enough yet, is it, Harry? We need it a little bit colder. Our heating hasn't come on yet, so there can't be much heat going out. But what I'd like to know is, have you got an army already recruited? How many people have you got? Do you want us to keep talking about it and start recruiting people to give us a hand with it? What's the situation? Because it's all going to depend on the number of people you get.
Okay, so we're going to use thermal imaging cameras, and use those to draw attention to the losses from houses. If we look at them outside on a cold night, we aren't really anywhere near being able to do that, because it's not cold enough outdoors to demonstrate the massive heat loss from some. For example, in an estate of very similar homes, there'll be some that will be massively efficient because of decisions that have been taken by the homeowner, and some that may by accident just be giving away heat to the outside cold air. So I'm imagining that we would be ready for that round about the end of November, December, when things start to get really chilly. So the answer to your question is yes, we desperately do need people to step forward. We're going to be running workshops. I think some dates have already been set provisionally.
26th of October and the 31st of October. We have got a small number of people who are already very keen to take part, but yes, we would like to add to that if we can.
So the workshops will be run on a very experimental basis until we know what it is that the people who are attending don't know about energy efficiency in homes. Some people have come from a building energy assessor background with the City and Guilds kind of qualification, so they would have been involved in energy performance certificates, and other people have just taken a great deal of personal interest in it, and yet others have come across this entirely as an act of self-education and self-improvement on the behalf of their own homes. So we've got a mixed bag. So the workshops are going to be aiming to cover a tall range of skills, prior skills, so that when we do go out and talk to our neighbours and say, we've got an opportunity to have a look at these things, are you interested in participating? Then we go out with some confidence that we can be constructively helpful to those homeowners.
And if anybody would like to join one of those workshops, then do let us know, and I'm happy for you to do so, obviously. Rupert.
Sorry to keep going
That's
on. Second question. It looks as if we might be in for a bit of a recession in the building industry with the high cost of mortgages and so on. Does this mean that the sort of people, the workmen who can put in place the insulation or whatever it is houses need to do are going to become more available? Because at the moment, everybody is in very short supply. I've been trying to get an electrician for ages and can't find anybody to come along and do a little bit of work, because they can all get good long contracts on these new housing estates.
I think a good tradesman is never going to be out of work. And my fear is that there will be people seeing this as an opportunity to get themselves in employment when they don't deserve to be. So I think it's from talking to other groups across the country, the real need is to get a gauge on what is required. It's going to be a 7-year process to able to meet our 2030 emissions target. During that time, we're going to need to be able to program for those kinds of home improvements that might be relevant to an individual householder, to get the colleges putting courses on that will equip people. Many of the tradesmen we've got today are, I'm not saying that they are unaware of the new technologies, but they may be afraid of it. And there's nothing to be afraid of. It just needs to be translated into something that everybody can understand. And that probably would be, when we can find the colleges to do it, an apprenticeship-based training program that may be able to be kicked off in the next year, or maybe the year after. But those are the kinds of things that we need to elevate the conversation. We need to get it beyond our group. We need to get it at the council level. We need to get it at the national government level, and we need to get the colleges involved. All we're doing in the first year of this exercise is demonstrate the absolute scale of the need and the shortcomings that we immediately identify, so that they can be dealt with promptly. And then we can get a program of work for as I say, 100,000 homes across our region, and just find the labour and the skill set that will deliver energy efficiency opportunities for the homeowners.
But then should we be talking to the council about this now to get them sort of thinking on the right lines? And
I think we
also,
have been
should we
talking
be
to them, Rupert.
publicising this to parish councils, because they're the ones who are going to have to put people forward, aren't they, to get trained?
I'm slightly nervous in the sense that if someone says, that's great, we want all of that, deliver it now, Corn is not in a position to do that. We need to be on a learning curve ourselves. We need to be confident that when we open our mouths and start talking about it, we can demonstrate with, we want to be evidence driven when we go up with these things, rather than parroting what other people have been putting around. This is a very local topic, even if it's spread across the entirety of West Northamptonshire. And there may well be that there are neighbouring groups doing precisely that we have yet to hear about. And there may be a college in North Oxfordshire or just in Warwickshire that can offer some kind of training that we've just not heard about yet. So I think if we can just feel our way through this and get a lot of enthusiastic support from people as we have here tonight, then I feel that we're making some progress.
Thank you. And Mike, you've been very patient. You've got your hand up. What would you like to say?
Yes, I'm way out of date on this now. So, but are there any data protection issues with such a record?
Yes.
But we will take care of those. So the data collected won't be published in anything other than an anonymised and aggregated form. There will be some personal information collected, but we will make sure that that is all looked after in accordance with legal guidelines. But yes, it's a very good point. It's something that we do need to be aware of. Does anybody have anything else that they want to ask on that, or anything else to add before we this is quite a big thing that we're looking at, so you can expect to hear more about it over the coming months, obviously, as we roll the project out over the winter. The other main thing that we're looking at to start in 2023 is that we have been talking to West Northamptonshire Council. Harry and I had a call with Martin Wilson of the sustainability team a couple of weeks ago about starting some sort of forum, potentially across the whole of the county, so collaborating across North Northamptonshire as well. Provisionally called a sustainability forum. That feels like a bit of a dull title, but I haven't come up with anything better yet. But really for a range of stakeholders right across the sort of spectrum of the different sectors of society. So voluntary organisations like us, the council are keen to take part, but not to actually drive this as a forum, which I feel is to a degree sensible on their part, because it might encourage more engagement from other people if the council isn't seen to be running it. And if they are running it, then there's always a danger that they will just be seen as required to do everything. And whilst they need to do a lot, they don't need to do everything. So they would be involved, and potentially businesses as well. We're still very much working on how this might take shape. An initial thought was that we might focus on the climate adaptation side, because to date there has been quite a lot of focus on climate mitigation, i.e. meeting net zero targets and carbon reduction targets, but not so much thinking about adaptation. And it seems as if, given the number of extreme weather events we're seeing across the world, and indeed in the UK this summer, who would ever have thought that we'd see wildfires in the UK burning down houses in the home counties? That adaptation is something that we need to think about quite seriously and quite soon. But this is all in extremely early stages, so that's just sort of a heads up that that's something that we are looking at the moment. Thoughts or questions on that at all? I'll obviously tell you more about that as the plans progress. So that is everything that I had on my list of things to discuss. The only other thing I would say is that obviously throughout the next 12 months, as other projects come up, then we'll be looking to instigate more where we feel there's a need and when we've got the capability to try and deliver something. That was everything that we had on the agenda for the AGM section of the meeting. We will finish off with a short, some items to be covered under sort of the general meeting, which we'd normally have at this time of the month. Does anybody else want to add anything to the AGM section before I draw that to a close? Okay, so the only thing I would say is that thinking well ahead, the date of the next AGM, assuming that we will have it on the 3rd Thursday of October again next year, would be Thursday the 19th of October 2023.
Can I just say, Jane?
Yes.
How much we appreciate your work, Harry's work, and everybody else's. But you're doing a fantastic job, and without you, this thing would fall apart. So keep it up, please, and we much appreciate
Thank you,
it.
you're very kind. I'm not sure that's true. No one is irreplaceable, but thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Right, so I'll draw the AGM to a close. I've got a few items on the agenda for a sort of that seem more appropriate to a general meeting. We have got 2 local events coming up in the next couple of weeks, which Corn is attending. On this Saturday, the 22nd of October, as part of the Northampton Town Climate Forum, Claire Robertson-Marriott is organising a climate hub at the Western Favour Centre. So she's going to have a display on there. I think she's probably got a couple of other organisations attending as well. So the intention is really just to try and engage with people, hopefully in a place where there will be lots of people and they might be willing to stop and talk about things other than what they're going to buy at Tesco's. So that will be interesting. And the following Saturday, some of you may have been at a meeting earlier on this year that was attended by a chap called Damon Fox, who works for the Northampton Town, what is it? I can't remember. Northampton Town Development something, I think, I can't remember, sorry. But essentially, he runs a thing called Planet Super League, which sort of uses football to help engage people with doing actions which are environmentally friendly, stopping waste, all those kinds of things. So it seems like quite a good initiative, a way of reaching perhaps a constituency that you wouldn't normally reach through environmental groups like ours. They are organising a sustainability event at the Sixfield Stadium on Saturday, the 29th of October, ahead of a home match against maybe, I actually have no idea.
Newport.
Is it? Thank you.
Newport County.
Thank you very much. The added incentive of taking a stand there is that it comes with an offer of a free ticket to the match. Not sure. I will be going along to talk to people about climate things. I'm not sure whether I'll be going to the football or not. I'm not a massive football person, but perhaps, for both of those events, happy for anyone else to come along and help man that stand, to talk to people about climate, all that kind of thing. You don't have to all shout now, but if you're available for either of those Saturdays, even to come along for half an hour or so, that would be great. Or even if you just are in the area and want to come by and say hello, that would also be nice.
Let me have the details, Jane. I'll see if I can make that one.
What, the football one?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, that's fine. I will. I'll send you a note with the details. In fact, what I might do, I've got a little. They've sent like a flyer, so I might send the flyer out with the meeting notes so everybody can see. Anyway.
I may be free on the 29th. So.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. What other thing? There is currently a consultation underway. This is one of the West Northamptonshire Council consultations about the about further changes to the new railway station. And I think these particular proposals include the walking and cycling infrastructure around the station. Some of you may already be aware of the Living Streets Northampton organisation, which is very much focused on promoting active travel within the town. They have put together a response, which they're happy to share with people. The date for responding to the consultation is the 28th of October. I will send out details of that again with the meeting minutes, but again, it's always good to have input into these consultations. The point of running consultation exercises is to get the views of people. They're not always easy to fill in, but you could have a look at the Living Streets one for some inspiration. And finally, there's something that Maria wanted me to add on to the agenda. As Maria said in her little introductory piece in the chat box, she's been getting familiar with a game called Climate Fresque, which I think is a game that started in France, and it's intended to sort of educate and train people around climate and environmental topics in a fun way. Do you want to tell us a bit more about it, Maria? Because I only heard about it today when you told me, so I've only had a quick look on their website. We can't hear you.
Somebody in Paris decided a couple of years ago, I think, to devise a game based on the United Nations Panel of Climate Change reports, which actually explores in some detail. I learned quite a lot. I played it yesterday in Islington. You can go along for £5 or £10 and play the game. It's a workshop format. There's between 4 and 7 of you at a table, and you're given a group of cards, and it relates scientific processes affecting land, sea, air, ice, etc., and the consequences, which of course are dire, but that's sort of kept up their sleeve. In the meantime, people are learning a tremendous amount about the differences in processes which they might have thought were the same, and how one thing affects another. And I learned a lot about the oceans, and I thought I'd train as a facilitator, but I really like other people to join me in becoming a facilitator, because then it'd be more fun to go as 2 people, for example, to a department in the council, or a 6th form group or whatever. The game you can play online, but I got unstuck trying to figure it out. So I decided to go and do it anyway. So it's once a month at the Islington Climate Centre, which is in a shopping centre called the Angel Centre, next to, for us, very convenient, Northern Line Tube. So it cost me £21 return to go there yesterday, and I played a game with an incredible mixture of interesting people, and learned a lot, and I thought I knew a lot. So it's a game that can really stretch you. And I just thought I'd put the link in, and you can just have a look. And if you want to play it, then you can become a facilitator. You just play it once, and that qualifies you to train as a facilitator. So I'm going to go tomorrow to train as a facilitator. And there's also lots of online materials as well. And it's just a way of educating people. But obviously, there's one thing becoming a facilitator, and the next thing is to actually get 6th forms or businesses, or maybe ecologically minded businesses, to invite you to go along. It's a 3-hour thing altogether, so it's a morning or afternoon, great team building. And yeah, I'm just putting it out there so you can have a look at the website, and hopefully some of you will be inspired to play and maybe even become facilitators as well.
Thanks, Maria. I've had a look at it as well. I'd have to say it does sound like a really good idea. I'm going to try and organise to go along to a session. There are some online ones, aren't there, that you can do rather than having to attend an in-person event, and you can do the facilitation training online as well. It looks as if it's probably about £35 to train as a facilitator.
Yeah, to play is £5 or £10.
Yeah, so it's not not exhaustive. yeah. And it feels like it's something that could be a really good thing for us to offer people, you know, perhaps for organisations like, let's say, parish councils, or, as Maria says, companies or voluntary organisations just want to learn a bit more. It feels like it could be a bit of a new string to our bow, potentially. Sorry, I'm laughing at Harry's cat. But yes, I think it's definitely something worth looking into. So as Maria said, she's put the link into the chat. So let us know what you think. And then, you know, perhaps if a couple of us can get trained as facilitators, we could run a session for Corn people. I think that would be a really good place to start, wouldn't it? Thank you. That's a really good idea. I didn't have anything else that I wanted to raise. Does anyone have anything that they want to mention, or anything that I should have mentioned and haven't? I'll take that as a no so far then.
I'd just like to say thank you very much to everybody for turning up.
Yes, thank you. That is a very good point. Yeah. Oh, actually, oh yes, David.
Just a minor point, any communications that you can put your donate information on, that's a very good thing to do.
We'll have to figure out the best way of doing that, I think. Because ideally you'd want just a straightforward pay button.
Some people will still send you a check, so as long as Harry's happy to go to the bank to bank them, then I'm sure they wouldn't go amiss.
I'm sure we can work that out. Yeah, haven't seen a check for a while, but yes, that is a good point. Thank you. And actually, there was just one other thing that I was just going to very briefly mention, which is I've heard that there's a potential. There are obviously things have been quite interesting at the top end of politics in this country over the last few weeks, but one of the things that had been talked about was the creation of investment zones, which seem to be somewhat like enterprise zones, but with bells on. And I think there is possibly a suggestion that West Northamptonshire might want to look at one of those, which is something that we'll obviously need to keep an eye on because of the relaxation of planning requirements that comes along with that. But that is all I know at the moment. So just to say, David, yeah.
They worry me intensely in that a lot of the relaxations will affect green space and a lot of the protections for green space. So we certainly do need to look very carefully at that.
Yeah, and obviously Northampton does already have a substantial size enterprise zone, so
it frightens me.
Yeah. But there was nothing else that I wanted to say other than that. Does anybody else have any other business? The other thing I should probably say, apart from echoing Harry's thanks to everybody for coming, thank you so much. Look forward to hopefully seeing you many more times over the coming year. The only thing I would say is that normally our general meetings finish at 9, but then are followed by a shorter period of just informal chat for anybody that wants to stick around. So we will do that as usual tonight. Our next monthly meeting will be on Thursday, the 17th of November. So if no one else has any other business, we can draw the formal part of the meeting to a close there. So I will stop the recording.